There is a saying I've heard of some of the guys that worked here as young people under my grandfather's initial leadership, he and his brother. If you weren't making a mistake, you weren't working hard enough.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Barbara Casey Lane. She's the CEO and chairman of the board at LTI. LTI is a family-owned and operated food service equipment designer and manufacturer, and they're based in my home state of Georgia. They're based in Jonesboro, Georgia. As a third-generation family member, Barbara spent the early years of her career at LTI as an assistant to the CFO. After graduating from the University of Georgia with a BA degree in English, her career path led her to several companies concentrating in the areas of product development, marketing, as well as operating systems and leadership development. In 2013, she returned to LTI, and as COO, she oversaw the operational side of the business. In 2022, Barbara was named CEO and chairman of the board. I've invited Barbara to join us to share a bit about her experience as CEO, and particularly her experience as being the CEO of a third-generation company. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I introduced LTI. Is it a secret what LTI stands for? I've looked it up, but do you keep
Not
that low-key? Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's just an acronym of kind of an absurd name if you've never heard of it before. Low Temp Industries. Has to do with early refrigeration work that the company was doing when they first began in sales and operations here in Atlanta. So, yeah, we manufacture, like you mentioned, custom food service equipment, and in an industry that serves schools, hospitals, restaurants, business and industry. So we've been here almost 80 years in our current location. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm third generation. Two of my sons and a niece are part of the fourth generation that are working here with me now.
I love that. We spoke prior to scheduling this, and since I have been paying particular attention, and I failed to remember, food service, it's everywhere. And I suspect I spent time on your website. I've looked at really the neat products that you offer. Let's go back to, I think it was around 1947, this business was founded. And in that time, I know it's evolved a great deal, but one thing you just said that caught my attention, has all of that been largely on the same site?
Yes, we have. So behind the property where we're currently sitting, we've been in this new building all under one roof for almost 4 years. Mm-hmm. And we were in our old buildings, which we still own, right behind us. Yeah, you're right, almost 8 decades. So very exciting to still be here and do what we do. We're really grateful.
You mentioned under one roof. By going under one roof, what did that do for the business? And in turn, what did that do for your customers?
Right. So good sightline and visibility of our workforce and being able to see ways that we may be able to help them to be more productive, to have our product move through lines more efficiently. We were taking things between 7 different roofs before. So we would put very large, what we build is very large serving equipment. Like if you went to a school or a hospital and you were eating lunch with your family, let's say at the hospital while you're waiting on a loved one, or your kids are at school, the serving line that they're taking their tray and moving down hot and cold food wells to be served their lunch for the day, that's the equipment that we manufacture. So in our previous campus, we were moving very, very large pieces of stainless steel and fiberglass equipment on a forklifts between buildings up and down a parking lot. So we're very able to be on flat ground and be together. So
You mentioned the word line of sight, and I think of line of sight in a couple of settings. One of the settings is when you're manufacturing something, to be able to see it makes good sense. But what really that triggered for me is the conversation you and I had prior, and that is line of sight when it comes to the employees.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Well, one might automatically think, oh, you're just trying to keep an eye on people. Well, the way that we look at it is an opportunity to look for ways that we can help our people. We do want them to be safe. We want them to be in an environment where they love to come to. Not that manufacturing is something you wake up every morning going, oh, wow, I get to go sweat and get really dirty today. But we actually really believe in what we do. We believe in our employees. They take great pride in a craftsmanship that they bring to the table. I'm blown away. I go out. I'm certainly in my office right this moment, but when I need to clear my head, I go out there on that floor and I walk up and down and I speak to people. I look at what they're building and I feel so grateful that we get to do what we're doing. And the people are the most important piece of what we do.
Now, I come out of a corporate HR background, so I love hearing those types of words, but I particularly love it when they're coming from the heart. You're speaking from the heart. You're representing a third generation, and it sounds as if you're ready in the fourth generation. How does that feel as a third generation? Did you feel a sense of pressure when you assumed that role?
Oh, that's a great question. So the way I describe it is I had an opportunity when I was a young person. I think I was maybe in ninth grade when my great aunt, who was the secretary treasurer of the company at the time, she and my grandfather and other siblings, there were 10 of them total.
Goodness.
In the family, and then about half of them, I believe, working here together at that time. They asked me to come in, and I learned. I counted the money from the Pepsi machine. I learned from her the basics of accounts receivable and payable, where the money's coming from and where it's going. I went to the bank with her every day. I went to the post office with her every day. And at the time, not necessarily allowed to go out on the plant floor. It was all men at the time. But things have changed over time. What hasn't changed is what I got in terms of the opportunity to work with both the first and second generation was the way that they cared about the people. Mm-hmm. They valued the skill that they brought to the table, that they thought very carefully and thoughtfully on that, making sure that they were taken care of and their families felt that they were taken care of. And I learned that. Every day we would do that here at work, and then we'd go home at night. I remember once, even as a child, experiencing my dad, who was the vice president at the time, coming home. I think they had to experience maybe in the 70s a layoff at the time. When there was a significant loss of business at one point, and needing to let some employees go. And I remember him saying that he couldn't eat. And it bothered him so much to have to think about families that might suffer because of that. And I've never forgotten that. And I knew that the employees were the most important piece to our business. And that's something that I feel still very strongly about. And I love that I get the opportunity. I'm eating with the two sons that I mentioned, Tim and Ben, and my niece, Tessie. We eat lunch together a lot. They eat lunch together a lot. And I used to do that with my aunt when I was at work. Just the conversations that you have around the dinner table, around the lunch table, that work doesn't go away. You're still thinking about those people. You're enjoying food together. We're in the food business, but we're also thinking about how to care for our wonderful employees.
I had the opportunity early in my career to go work for a family-owned business that grew very fast.
Yeah.
Over time, that family business became publicly held. And before I knew it, I was working for a small family company, and now I was leading HR for a Fortune 500 company, and it happened very, very quickly. Yeah. What I saw in that time is we lost that sense of family. And the people who had been around for a while, they yearned for that. They missed it. They actually grieved that sense of loss. Yeah. You are third generation, ready in the fourth generation. You mentioned that you just kind of learned just the criticality of how important employees are. You mentioned an economic downturn in the 70s. Um, uh, the economy has been up and down. Is your business subject to that type of shift? Is it significantly up or down, or have you been able to weather the ups and downs a little bit better?
That's a great question. So I would say one of the things that my dad also encouraged us about the line of work that we're in serving people food, they're always going to, as long as there are people on the earth, they have to eat. It's kind of a fundamental. So if you can think through ways to be creative and to stay relevant, even when times are not as great, when the economy is not flourishing in the way that you would like it to be when you're at the top of your game, there are ways that you can still be relevant. And that's important. It's also something to think about when, there our particular segment, even though, schools are serving lunches, of course, in the United States, that's the bulk of our business. And maybe we're still seeing schools coming and think, we're not as worried about our particular segment, but it could be people that supply, the supply chain link for us that's become disrupted. That certainly happened during COVID. People still needed to eat. We were still, an essential business, and we were preparing equipment, but some of our suppliers were experiencing an economic downturn that they had never, just scarcity of product that they had never seen. So, that's going to come and go. You have to pay attention to those things. And I would say just see them as opportunities to get better. Nothing's ever going to be perfect in your life or particularly in business either. So you've got to learn how to ride that wave. If you have the right team, you can do that together.
Well, one thing I liked about your background is, yes, you did serve as an assistant to the CFO, but you went off and got I think, an English degree, and found yourself back in the business. But in my intro, I described that leadership development was an area that you had a particular passion for. That came through in our prior conversation. What is it about leadership development that speaks to you as CEO?
Yeah. So when I left the company, the first time I'd been working here in most of my very early development as a young person and a young career, I didn't know anything but family business. So you just did whatever you had to do. You wore hats that you weren't necessarily required to or need, maybe you were educated to wear, but my aunt called it a school of hard knocks. And so you dove in and you did what you had to do, and the family did it together. So the only reason that I left here when I did, after graduating college and working here a year, is to get married. And we followed my husband's career for about 25 years, and which was wonderful. Still married to him 35 years later. So grateful for that move. But what I didn't know I was going to experience when I left here was my own grieving. I didn't understand that how much I loved the people. I loved what we did. I loved the atmosphere of being a family who was serving and working alongside of other families. It was such a strong picture for me. But I did have the opportunity, because my husband's line of work was mostly nonprofit. You take those skills that you've honed, and then you hone them even more when you have a shoestring budget, and as most nonprofits do. So you're learning to do a lot with very little. So what was wonderful about that 25-year period is I was able to learn some lessons there, especially when we were working in a nonprofit and fundraising. Worked with a lot of business people from all different aspects of industries in the company or in the United States, and I had the opportunity to learn from them, their different aspects of business. How could we make a nonprofit better by learning how to manage inventory? Learning how to do excellent customer service if there's an emergency, learning how to construct a website from nothing, learning how to build. It was early days of social media, and we were grabbing Twitter accounts and, creating a Facebook page. I was way before Instagram, of course, and understanding how to reach people in different platforms, creating e-commerce. Had the opportunity to do all of those things on a very creative level, again, on a shoestring budget, and developing leadership out of people who were passionate about the mission. So that was wonderful to build rapport with people who really had a common goal. And so that actually felt pretty similar. to what I had experienced as a young person. And so I think having a wonderful plethora of opportunities there gave me some things to really come back and hone when I came back to the business here, which was about 10 years ago.
You've stepped into this role in an industry that probably for most of the industries is a male-dominated industry. How accepting has the industry been to you as a female?
That is a great question. So I would say one of the things is that I have experienced is because I am a third generation and I'm very close in age because my grandfather had children young, my dad had children young. And I got to work with both of them. I can quickly associate with them in terms of reputation, which is phenomenal. And that is a gift. And that is something that I do not take for granted. And I think also we're in an industry, especially with schools, where there is a very large number of women who are decision makers in school food service. And so that level of leadership is probably something that I didn't realize was so prominent and wonderful. And then I realized that a lot of the sales force that we had and what I've been a part of, and a lot of the leadership on the manufacturing side has been male dominated. And if we can find a way to connect I've watched some of our women's sales force recently. They're not just there to go to a party or make the food service director feel really good. That all still goes on, of course, which is natural for sales. But I see these women on the sales side actually embracing the fact that they are working with other women. They are teaching them things they may not know that they can bring to the table. Hey, did you know the manufacturer actually puts a project together in this way? Let me come and help you do that. And they empower them instead of thinking they just, they have a place because of their position or because they've been a male and been, doing it their whole lives. That's been wonderful to see. And then since I've been in my role as COO, I started embracing the fact that women could be on the manufacturing floor as well. Some of our leaders in the shop are women. One in particular, that's our master scheduler. She came here as a welder. She wanted to learn how to weld. And so she actually had worked her way through the shop doing very different aspects and now coordinates when I talked about the sight line, she coordinates everything that's going down each one of those lines of product, and really thankful to have her.
One thing that we talked about before we hit the record button is you've learned some valuable lessons along the way. Could you share an example where perhaps you or your organization got stuck? And what did it take to get unstuck?
It's funny because when I think about that term, I probably experienced that to a very small degree every single day. There's something where I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're back here again. I thought we dealt with that. And here, a lot of times that is dealing with people and thinking, I thought as an organization, we were past that. But then something comes up, either someone's experience at home that day, a way employees have interacted with each other, something that was said that was maybe mildly or, inappropriate. Things that you think you've moved past or we've grown beyond. But, we're people and we make mistakes. And I think one of the things that I've tried to foster and our leadership team works to foster here is a place where mistakes are, they're allowed because they're going to happen. We're not perfect people. And if we can recognize our mistakes, own them, and then work together as a team to correct them, you're really building that rapport. You're building that foundation that a strong business can flourish in.
Given the permission, if I could use that term, to fail, not that it's encouraged, but when it happens, what do we learn from that and moving on? Was that something that was relatively new but kind of got introduced under your leadership?
No, that's a great question. So there is a saying, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get this correct or not. I've heard of some of the guys that worked here as young people under my grandfather's initial leadership, he and his brother, who ran the plant with him. If you weren't making a mistake, you weren't working hard enough. I mean, if you're, especially when you're in the line of work that we're in, we're not doing an assembly line here. We have unique product, and it takes a certain level of skill to be here. And sometimes you're getting a project you may not have ever seen before. It's got a different turn or twist to it. And you want to have the most knowledge that you can going into the project. You want to make sure you've gotten details buttoned up, but you're going to make a mistake. And because there's so many layers of how we go to market, there's so many layers of how we our equipment actually gets into the field. Sometimes it may change a truck a couple of times. If it's going all the way across the country from Atlanta to the West Coast, it's going to change trucks. That's a challenge by itself. We have to make sure that we're meeting a deadline where all of the trades in the construction process of it is something that's being undergoing reconstruction or a brand new construction project. There's a lot of factors that go into making sure things land. Plumbing and electrical has to be in place before we can bring, sinks and hot and cold food wells in. All of those factors have to be in place. That takes a lot of coordination. And there's probably going to be mistakes or something that was missed along the way. But honestly, it's how quickly you recover from the mistake. It's recognizing it. It's recovering from it and learning from it that makes you stronger.
I forget, when we think of manufacturing, I think there's a tendency for us to think, well, they just make the same thing over and over and over again. Most of your products are almost custom, are they not?
They are. We do have what we call drop-ins. They're technology that we developed, the quick switch technology. We were the first to market. Very, very proud and thankful for that product, where you can change from hot to cold to frozen, all within 30 minutes of each other. So if you're serving something hot for breakfast and you need to serve something cold for lunch, you're doing eggs, maybe something warm for breakfast, you want to go to a salad bar, you could do that in the same unit. We patented that product, and we're the first to market with it many years ago. Very thankful that we still are the leaders with the drop-ins. That is the most prominent, probably repetitive product that we do. It's a large portion of our sales. And then the long serving lines that I described are more along the custom. What those particular hot and cold food wells may be dropping into, that would be more of the custom side.
Yeah, I don't know much about your industry other than as I have volunteered at church or the like, and it's the traditional steam tables, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
they don't have the capacity to do what you're just offering.
Right. That's right.
I can see why that would be something, one, you're proud of, and I can see why that's a popular product that you could use. Barbara, we've talked about a variety of things. I would love to kind of get any further thoughts you would have about leadership in general. That is something that when we talk about that, you actually kind of set up anything you would like to share about leadership that maybe I haven't asked. That's obviously unscripted, but anything that you have learned along the way that you think, this is a good chance for me to share it.
Yeah, I would say definitely taking seriously the word humility. I think that's something, that you don't take for granted. I think I have to be the first one to the table to admit when I have not done something correctly, when I have not handled a situation well, when I have said something that I shouldn't have said. I need to be the very first one in humility to come to the table and say, you guys, I really screwed that up. I need to own it, and I need to, be the first one to deal with it and make sure it's corrected going forward. We've been working with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Patrick Lencioni and the Table Group, but love Pat's books and the whole aspect of the humble, hungry, smart. That's something we take very seriously when we are looking at how we evaluate ourselves, how we evaluate our employees, and what kind of employee we're actually looking for when we're in recruiting mode.
Which of those three have you found most difficult to find? Those who are humble, hungry, or I know you're looking for all three, but which of those three characteristics are most elusive in your experience?
I would definitely say humility, being humble, and because it's very obvious when you run into someone who doesn't think about themselves first, and they are thinking about the team. They're thinking about how to make things better. They're thinking again, about others, not themselves. And that is something I need to be doing every day, something I expect from our executive team. And this is something we're actually working on how to communicate as we're recruiting. So, and looking for new employees.
Because family is so important, because you've built this over that, do you use more of a panel approach when you're looking to bring in folks to the organization?
One of the best ways that we have found to find that gold employee, honestly, is by a referral from an employee who's already here. Yeah. We have family, multiple generations, not just in the ownership of the company, but also in our employee base, which is wonderful. We actually right now have father, son, and grandson. We have a grandmother, a daughter, and a granddaughter. And we have lots of uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews. And so not just that, but we also have people who are neighbors and who are friends, people that go to church with one another or, just know each other from some community activism. And they're recommending the company because this is a place they want to be. That's one of my favorite things to ask when I talk with employees. Is, what would make you want to retire here? And sometimes those are answers that I don't want to hear, but I need to hear because I want everybody to want to be here, and then it's not going to always be a fit for every single person for their entire career. And I totally get that. I mean, I left for 25 years and came back. But I came back and, there's something very, very, comforting to know that people are wanting to bring others into an environment where they want to be, where they feel they are cared for, safe, treated fairly, and are producing an incredible product.
Very, very well said. Do you have any closing thoughts or takeaways you'd like to share?
I love the name of your podcast, Unstuck. There's we all feel that way at times. We feel that way, and like I said, there are little bits each day where we're thinking, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're back here again," or this product doesn't have the same relevance that it had before. And we get the right minds to the table, and we start thinking about, how can we do this better? How can we constantly be improving? Like my father said growing up, I can't remember if I've already mentioned this or not, but, it may not be necessarily a glamorous industry, but it is definitely a necessary one. People always have to eat. And if we're at the forefront of thinking about how to provide an environment for them that they do want to come to, a table they want to be sitting at with walls that are beautiful, decor around them, maybe signage in the on the cafeteria walls that's inspiring, and then serving lines that match that. We like to think of it as kind of our version of HGTV, where we want to redo the space and make it a place where kids want to be together and come into a community, or like I mentioned earlier, a hospital where you're dealing with some maybe a situation that's very difficult. And the place where the family is, going to gather is going to be down having a meal together, maybe a breakfast or lunch, and dealing with some news they just got. Business and industry, you've got corporate environments where you want your employees to be able to come together at a meal table and talk about their day. It's not just a water fountain. It's also a place where they can bring their lunch and be a community. And we feel very fortunate to be a part of that.
Barbara, before we wrap up with our final thoughts, I've got a question for our listeners. And that is, are people following you because they have to or because they want to? Are they obligated or inspired? I'm a leadership coach, and I work with executives who have a successful track record, but are now feeling stuck. They're stuck in their careers or maybe on how to move their company forward. They're frustrated because they're finding that with each level of success, the bar gets set even higher. And what worked in the past, it's not working any longer. So I work with these leaders to help uncover hidden blind spots, challenge limiting beliefs, and foster a strong sense of accountability. So if feeling stuck sounds like you or someone you know, let's talk. Head over to bench-builders.com to schedule a call. Now, Barbara, you've opened my eyes to a number of things I haven't thought of. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is great to be here with you today, Mike.
Barbara, if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So the best way to find out what we're up to, what job opportunities we may have, and just to find a little bit more about what we can bring to the table for you, literally to the table. Our website is lowtempind.com. It's short for Low Temp Industries. So lowtempind.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Have a great day.
Thank you. I also want to thank our listeners for joining us, and I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Barbara that will help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.